What would the world look like if people felt like they mattered? Welcome to the Lead with Love podcast, exploring what it means to lead with love in business and life. I'm your host, Jada Selner, and in this show, I'll share meaningful conversations to help you, the creative, the entrepreneur, the world changer, reach more people, go after your dreams, and serve your community with love. I appreciate you joining me. Now let's get cozy and start today's episode. I'm so excited to share this conversation with you today. If you are looking to create and lead with more joy and fully own who you are and really enjoy the process along the way, then this episode is for you. You're listening to episode 141 of the Lead with Love podcast. And in today's conversation, I get cozy with my dear friend, Elizabeth DiAlto. We talk about doing business your way, reclaiming our power as women, how to lean into uncomfortable conversations imperfectly, and we even talk about stand-up comedy. Elizabeth is an integrative spiritual counselor, creator of Wild Soul Movement, an author, and the host of the popular Truth Telling with Elizabeth DiAlto podcast. I actually got an opportunity to interview Elizabeth on her podcast, as well as she interviewed me on hers. So I will definitely link to those in the show notes over at jadaselner.com/141. Now, Elizabeth is known for her raw, honest, and grounded approach to self-help and spirituality. She is a teacher, leader, speaker, coach, and trainer to groups and individuals for 15 plus years in 3 different industries. And in 2013, Shape magazine listed her alongside Dr. Oz, Ellen, Jillian Michaels, Tim Ferriss as a top 30 motivator, and she is just a badass. So you definitely want to listen. And one of her greatest missions in this life is to help those who identify as women worldwide to reclaim and redefine their own womanhood and contribute to a new paradigm of culture where it is both safe and natural for women to love, trust, and accept themselves fully. Now let's get cozy with Elizabeth DiAlto. Hey, Elizabeth.
What up, girl?
Oh my goodness. I'm so excited to connect with you. I feel like we had our boxer love affair and then we took a little dip and hiatus. So this feels like a reunion.
Yeah, I feel like you went on some pretty serious trips and now we're back in action.
Yes. And we were just talking about, because I was trying to figure out, you know, when I first discovered you, I remember it was you were doing a video for your fitness stuff and it was like for a B school bonus. And then we connected kind of like in the virtual world, and you even interviewed me. Like it was like, you know, I was repping the Simple Green Smoothies brand at that time. And we did, I think that was our first like face-to-face digi connection.
Yeah.
And then we were reminiscing that how we first like squeezed each other in person was actually at Nisha's house over brunch.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember bringing green smoothies with chia seeds and like, I'm going to be a good friend and we're going to take pictures and I'll post it and give you guys shout outs with our 400,000 followers. So.
Yo, you know what's crazy is that, let me not say crazy. I've been really trying to detox my vernacular from ableist language. You know what is wild is literally 3 or 4 days ago, that picture from that brunch flashed into my mind. I was wearing like a white tank top and these electric blue pants. I don't remember what you were wearing, but for some reason that totally popped into my head. So wild that we're talking about it like 4 days later.
Oh, synchronicity. I'll post that picture in the show notes.
Amazing. Amazing.
Oh, I love that so much. So there's so many questions that I have for you, but the first one that I want to start with is, what does leading with love mean to you?
So for me, leading with love means that I am in the practice of holy consistency around, on a daily basis, connecting in with what I call my wild soul. Other people might call that your higher self. And really taking my directives from that space. really deeply taking my time and feeling into what wants to come through and what's the best next step or what's the best approach to a thing that transcends what my mind or my ego might be telling me based on all the like tools and practices and strategies and things that I've learned over the years. So like, what's the truest, most honest, most aligned expression for right now? That's really the most loving thing. So, and even more recently, because at the time of recording this, I'm in an enrollment period for my year-long women's circle, which is now called Power. And I just saw a bumper sticker the other day that said, if not for love, then for what? So literally for the last several days, whenever I like bump into something and I'm unsure, I ask myself the question, what would love do? And it might sound really cheesy, but when I do kind of like sit back into that, open my heart and surrender and let an answer come through, it's an amazing answer and it works.
I love that. Okay. So a few months back, I looked this up actually for your power circle, and you looked up the definition of power.
Yes.
And one of the synonyms was masculinity.
Yeah.
And I have to quote this because you said, my literal response out loud at my desk by myself was, oh, hell no. Hashtag Jesus hold my earrings.
Yes, that is exactly what happened.
So bring me back to what happened, or bring me there and like what happened next.
It was just like, where this sparked from is I've been running Wild Soul Movement weekend workshops for 2 years now. We're going into our third year of running those. And there is in the Wild Soul Movement work and in the Power Circle, what's now called the Power Circle, there's an arc of power, which is comprised of 4 topics: surrender and release, trust and receptivity, wild dreaming and desire, and love and truth. But I just recently renamed love and truth. That 4th topic, the name has actually been malleable since I first created Wild Soul Movement in 2013. But it finally anchored in that it's love and truth, and power is the overarching thing that we are embodying throughout the whole thing. That entire exploration, no matter how many times anyone does it, is to just more deeply embody, more fully embody your power. And so at my weekend workshops, when we get to that 4th part, the question I ask the group is, what is your current relationship to power? For many years, it was so fascinating to me how most people's answer, because I don't really lead it or guide it, and I do this on purpose, most people's answer is about like the external power. And most women's answers has to do with these like male authority figures in their life. And it's unhealthy. And it's like a power dynamic. It's a power over. So when I read that, I was like, damn, like, no. This is not what I'm here for, right? There's such healthier, more loving expression of power. Because for me, power is really comprised of love and truth and courage and wisdom, trust, connection, compassion. Mm. So it's just more integrated. So that's what I was exploring. I'm like, what's the actual dictionary definition? Because the dictionary definition will show you what has been historically prevalent in our culture up until now. So that's why I was looking at that. I'm like, if people were to look this up, what would it say? And I was like, well, great. Because I'm really big into defining things for myself and for my community.
I love that. And I think it's really courageous. And just, I'm like, I want to Google like all the words because it's crazy that it's 2018 and that's how power is defined.
Still, right?
And not crazy,
and again,
sorry, wild.
It was one of the synonyms. It wasn't like the primary definition. But yeah, one of the things that inspired me to start looking up the roots and the origins and the core and the definitions of words was Brene Brown's work when she talks about courage and how that the core of that is core, which is heart. Because often, even when we think of the word courage, we think of this like bravery or like a soldier or a warrior going out and like fighting. Mm. But really, it's the ability to like lead with love, like you're doing here, come from the heart.
What's just coming up for me, the picture that just came up was the lion.
Yeah.
In The Wizard of Oz.
Yes.
And the heart and courage. Like I didn't even put those pieces together, but that was just the image that came up for me.
That's really funny because that was the same image I was having.
Yeah. So let's talk about the birth of Wild Soul Movement, because you've had several iterations. I saw you going from showing your biceps in the fitness space on your website to
squeezing an orange in my bicep.
It was an orange.
Hilarious. What the hell is happening?
But then you went deep. You went in and you emerged and came out on the other side, this like fully embodied, authentically expressed and on fire you. And I'm just curious. I really want to unpack this journey because I think it's really important for people to hear. And my first question around this is like, did you have any hesitation moving from the physical fitness space, right, into the Wild Soul movement?
The hesitation for me at every pass, even most recently into this newest iteration, is it's kind of a who am I? But that is rooted in only being 35 years old. Yeah. And I'm just going to say this the way I'm going to say it. People can think of it, hear it, judge it, whatever you want. But fairly often, the wisdom that's coming through me, I'm like, where the hell did that come from? And how do I even know that? And fairly often as well, in Wild Soul Movement, this has literally happened so many times in the last 5 years. I'll create something. I'll have an idea that is my own idea. I didn't hear it somewhere else. I didn't read it anywhere. I didn't learn it. But it's like I didn't invent some of these somatic practices that are in Wild Soul Movement. Actually, when I invented it, I didn't even know the word somatic was or meant.
Right.
And some of these things. So I really believe in a collective intelligence. And I really believe that, so much of my work is rooted in the integration of physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and metaphysical. So by doing all of that, which sounds like a lot, but it's really not because of the system, the way Wild Soul Movement works, it's just allowed me to be like a cleaner, clearer channel for whatever needs to come through. But because that's the way it comes through, and because our culture is still honors like academia or credentials or like a PhD, for example, I think of someone like Brene Brown a lot. Would Brene Brown be the Brene Brown she is right now if she didn't have a PhD? No, she just wouldn't. So I think about that sometimes. That's my hesitation, because if people were to be like, well, where's the proof, or where did this come from? All I could literally tell you is journaling, praying, listening to God, and a lot of people don't want to hear that, but that's my truth. That's why one of the things that someone called me a couple of years ago that actually resonated for me was practical mystic. And I was like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I am. I basically sit down, listen, the ideas, the directives, the inspiration, whatever it is, the content, it comes through. And I'm like, okay, great, I'll do that.
And with Wild Soul Movement, I know that you've tried on different ways of delivering it in a way that best aligns with how you want to show up and serve in the world. And I think about how you were just talking about doing business your way. Like that's what you're feeling so good about today. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just curious what those iterations were over time and how they kind of evolved and sunk into what it is today.
Okay, I'm excited to geek out on this with you especially. So I'm very iterative. I have to try something. I've never been one of those people that could buy a course and follow someone else's like course framework formula, because plug and chug doesn't work for me. And so I don't have any expectation that it's going to work for my people. So it's always been very important to me to create things that still give people autonomy and still point them back to themselves. Because I'm also not interested in positioning myself as any kind of guru. People will do that though. People will put you on a pedestal. People will make you an authority and even make you their guru in some cases. But when you don't hold that, when you hold that like your people are sovereign and you are constantly just reflecting it back and giving their power back to them, to me, that's one of the healthiest ways to be a leader, to be a guide, to be a teacher, to be a mentor. And so that has always been threaded through. But what I've also had to do trial and error and figure out is how do I do that, but while also holding a solid container for people to do their work within. Because sometimes people aren't necessarily ready to hold themselves or guide themselves, even though that's the ultimate goal. So when I first created Wild Soul Movement, and again, I was really coming out of that like online marketing world where you and I had first connected, and I made it a 12-week program because there were 4 topics and 12 mantras. So I was like, all right, 12 mantras, 12 weeks. And it's like laughable to me now that I would think that someone could move through a mantra in a week. But that was me being green and not understanding like the depth and the alchemy and the healing, growth, and transformation that happens with this method.
So you delivered it as a 12-week course.
Yeah.
And how much did you charge for that?
First time out, $300.
Awesome.
And then, you know, it still was a fact, like it works, but a lot of people were overwhelmed. And this is something I hear consistently with my friends across industries, no matter what the course is, how people try to squeeze in so much stuff in some like 6-week or 12-week or 9-week time period. And mostly no one can finish it. And then people aren't necessarily integrating and implementing. They're spending time feeling so overwhelmed going, what's wrong with me? I can't finish this, you know? Meanwhile, they're not noticing that such a small percentage of people are actually completing.
Yes. You know what? One thing, and I want you to continue, but what I love about this is it's so true when you think of like how to build a business in 8 weeks. It's like I've been an entrepreneur for almost 10 years now. Right. And to try to like encapsulate and put everything that I know or to guide you to get that body of work out in 8 weeks, like doesn't make sense.
Right. Because of the phrase that you just used, it is a body of work. Which when I think of body of work, like I think of body of water, it's dynamic. Depending on the day, depending on the season, depending on the tides, it's going to look different. It's going to feel different. It's going to need different care, energy, and attention. You know, people are going to respond to it differently. Some people are going to be afraid of it. Some people are going to be able to dive right in. Some people are going to want to stay at the surface. Some people are going to want to go deep. And so how do we honor a range of people and meet them where they are? I know there's some people, it's like, well, figure out who your ideal customer avatar is. That's cool. However, even within an ideal customer avatar, you might write your marketing copy to one person, but that one person is still so individual and so unique and has so much nuance and complexity. And that's actually one of my greatest pet peeves with like all the online marketing and online education is it's really set up to work for so few people and be deeply, meaningfully effective for so few people. Yeah. And the people who it doesn't work for, which is the great majority, are, again, they're not sitting there going, oh, that wasn't for me. They're sitting there going, what's wrong with me? It works for this person. And they're doing the compare and despair instead of going, okay, what here does work for me? What can I take and make my own and like keep it moving? Because I'm, you know, a unique, gifted, talented individual, and I can do this. It just might not look exactly like this friggin' cookie cutter thing that someone's telling me works for everyone.
Yes. So iteration number 2. So you had 12 week, and I did that twice. And then I was like, okay, people are not finishing. This isn't enough time. And no matter how often you can say to people, it's cool. There's no such thing as behind. Go at your own pace. If it's not structured for that to be the intention, people are going to feel bad. And again, if people are feeling bad, if they're feeling guilty, if they're feeling ashamed, they are not going to finish. It's not going to be effective. They're going to bail on the work. So I decided to make it self-guided and evergreen. The thing is, on the marketing side of things, I had no interest in actually doing what you need to do if something's going to be evergreen. I love that you said that because I just released a project around that. It's like, oh, I don't want to put the effort and energy. Like the energy isn't behind it. It's not
interested. I'm not like a tweaker or tinkerer. Like I don't want to be doing that all the time. I'll revisit something and iterate, but like I'm not like month in, month out looking at the data and analyzing the funnel. I'd rather literally shoot myself in the foot.
Please don't do that.
I'm not gonna. So then I made it self-paced. And the thing with self-paced is it's, you know, container is a big literal thing and metaphorical thing for me in my work. But I think about how like a gas will expand to fit the container it's in. That's kind of what happens if you make something self-paced. People will just take all of the time. And in some cases that's useful and beneficial. Like I had women tell me like, I've been working on the trust module for an entire year, you know, and it works. And that's great because that's where they needed to go deep, but then they don't finish. Or then they hit the snag or the resistance and there's nothing pulling them through because we're not moving through it together. There's no momentum of the actual group. That's a big part of things. And over the years, I've run so many different like group oriented things where there was a time container. And I just see how that like we march forward together, right? Yeah. Because this is the kind of work that it's healing, it's growth, it's transformation. So it's going to happen in layers over time anyway. We're never complete. And so it's okay to peel back a layer and move on to the next part. And then you could always revisit. And so that's why I decided, and it's funny because it's always been set up. So where originally I went, oh, look, 4 topics, 12 mantras, 12 weeks. It's like, hi, 4 topics, 4 seasons, 12 months. This makes more sense. It's always been built. It's always been designed to be a year-long experience. But also for me as the space holder and the facilitator over the years, I've not necessarily wanted to commit myself to a year-long container. And part of that was because of things going on in my personal life. I didn't have the capacity. I had run some higher level mentorships. The longest I ever did was 9 months. And I did that during the hardest year of my life. And it was hard. It was hard to hold space for my own healing that year that I needed to do and hold space for 20 women for 9 months in a really deeply transformative program. But that just stretched my capacity and my ability to do those things. So that was cool. So then this year, 2018, I took off from anything super long-term like that. And then 2019, I'm like, oh yeah, now I could do this. And in the year, it just makes sense. And I also had some inspiration from 2 colleagues / friends, Barry Tesler and Molly Mahar, who run year-long programs. And I really kind of grilled them. I was like, walk me through it. Like, what is it actually like? I just wanted to kind of be able to feel into it a little bit before I committed to it. And then it really resonated.
And what were some of the biggest takeaways that you got from those conversations of conversating with your friends? And I do this too. Whenever I start a new project, it's like I have a list of like, okay, I'm going to launch a podcast. Who are my friends who have podcasts? Let me have some conversations. Like I reached out to you and my friend Nikki Elledge Brown. It was really like on my Trello to-do list to like connect and really get clear of like, is this something that I want to try on and experiment and lean into and kind of hear their experience so I could really get clear if it's for me and something that I want to try.
And it's so important. Like I remember telling you what to look out for, what you might hate about it.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things I was interested in. But what I loved the most that both of them really shared was to do one thing every year in and year out, not only on the marketing side to just focus on like one campaign, like one marketing season for this one thing and just like do it, whether it's bigger and better or just better and different, whatever, year in and year out. And to be able to have some things that are systematized that you just rinse and repeat, but just like sprinkle in, freshen it up every year. That felt really good to me. And then really just taking people through a year-long journey, which I love because I love my community. Even this year, like almost half of the people who have enrolled so far, and we're only like half, not even like we're like a week into the enrollment period, are alumni. They're coming back. And so I love that. I love like, there are women all over the world who I love as if they were my children, which is a weird thing to say as a 35-year-old woman who doesn't have real children. So let me just say I'm not detracting from like birth motherhood. What I mean is a lot of my work is essentially reparenting adults. It's modeling things for women that our parents and our culture certainly don't model for us, for most of us. And so I get to watch them grow up in a really beautiful adult way, but it's healing.
Yeah.
So I love that. And I like getting to go deep. That's one of the things over the years that's always tempted me. And I know you can relate to this, that temptation to go wide, that temptation for that big platform and like those vanity metrics and those numbers that people like, right? Like you'll get invited to more things because of the big numbers. Even though there's so many people out there whose work, I'm just going to say it, is straight up garbage. They just have big fucking numbers. Oh, can I say the F word here?
Yeah, it'll just get, my podcast editor will just add the little E mark on it. Don't worry. It's
okay,
all
great. Good. Listen, all my stuff is explicit. I can't help myself. I'm from Staten Island.
Full expression. Yes. I agree. Like that has been the ego part that I've even had to wrestle with of knowing that I wanted to go deep and more intimate, coming from building a big email list community and being so visible, when I'm like, I just want to go deep with a few, and there's still one-to-many energy in me. Like, I know that my story, the experiences, the wisdom, that it can help many, many people. And I look at it from the business model that works for me. So I'm like, the way that I can do that versus trying to create some evergreen course is drop all that wisdom and experience into a book that is affordable, that is tangible, that is accessible.
Yeah.
And that works for me. Like, that is the one-to-many path for me. And then people that I hold space for on a more energetic level, I actually want the intimacy. I want the depth, and I enjoy the longevity of getting to know people. And that can shift and change. Like, I could do my incubator for another year, and that's shifted. It's been like 9 months, 10 months, 12 months, back to 9, like really trying things on. And it's just really getting clear on like, where is your zone of joy, of love and expression, and where you feel most lit up, and like where you want to pour 80% of your energy into. And for me, it's like speaking, writing, leading retreats. And so building a model to match that. But there's iteration processes along the way. And I love how you just shared the shift of like, in a certain season of your life, like certain things didn't fit. And then as your capacity grows and expands, that then you're able to hold a different type of container.
Yeah. And there's nothing to judge yourself about with that, you know? And I think there's been this meme going around the week we're recording this. There's been this meme going around that says women are expected to raise children like it's a full-time job, and like have a full-time job like they don't have children, or something like that. You've probably seen it. But I feel like that kind of goes in our businesses as well. And this is, I don't think is exclusive to women, but people in general are expected to run a business like they don't have a whole entire other life. Like maybe they don't have a family, or maybe they don't have other obligations, or, you know, other things that they do or care about. And I know you and I also agree on this. I'm not about that life where I don't get to have a life because I have a business.
Yes.
I glorify busy. I don't think I'm special. My ego doesn't feel fed or significant because I have more things in my calendar than other people. For me, a marker of success is that I have space, and I have the agility to pivot if and when something isn't aligned for me, and the courage to do it, and the integrity to go, that didn't work. Even if I'm right up in the middle of something, even if I have to refund people or disappoint people, like the minute it's not aligned anymore, and that's clear, I'm not talking about like self-sabotagey kind of stuff. My work is embodiment. So I know when something is no longer aligned for me, I feel it and it's very clear. And I go, okay, I got to go. Because you said something a minute or two ago that I really agree with. It actually has to light you up in some kind of way. It's not that it has to feel good all the time, right? I think some people get really deluded into thinking only do what feels good. If you're only doing things that feel good, your ass is never going to build a business, like
or a relationship, or
anything. We all have to do some stuff we don't want to do. Sometimes it's not going to feel great to do, but we know on the other side of it, what will feel great is keeping a commitment to ourselves, or following through, or getting the lesson, following through to get the lesson. Sometimes the follow through isn't even to get the result. We don't get the result, but we get the lesson, or we get initiated into a higher level of leadership, right?
Yes. And I think also like creating a body of work where you enjoy creating it versus like I'm waiting to create the outcome, the result, I think is really important. And we actually had this conversation, and it takes a little pivots and lessons and different things like that. But I've gotten really clear on like books and retreats. And so I've prioritized that, and it's not an immediate moneymaker. It's a love over metrics decision of like, I am going to prioritize my time, my energy, my money, my resources into building the business that I'm saying that I really want. And so what does that look like? That looks like hiring a book coach, and not a coach that's going to make me write a book in 12 weeks. You know, really someone who's going to hold this space to hear my voice, to hear the stories, to pull out and like reflect themes and different things. So just putting those pieces in place and putting it on my to-do list of like things like these are the priority projects versus looking for the next moneymaker. And I almost got caught in like building another business because I've done my launches, I've enrolled, like money needs are met. And so I had this space, which when you said that, that was the answer that came from me of what I value and how I know I'm being successful is there space in my business and my life. And the space, we can fill it. We can fill it with more stuff, with more external validation, more money, more all of this, when actually that space, my intention was so that I could have the space to be creative and create that next body of work. And so that's where I caught myself and I was like, I almost did it again.
Right. It's a vicious cycle. And we're so like the programming and conditioning to fill the space goes so deep. It is so deep.
Yeah.
So it's no wonder that it was almost automatic for you to be like, okay, what goes in here? And then go, I don't do that anymore.
Right.
Conscious competence.
Yes. I mean, like money needs, things were already met, resources were already in place. And it was like, that was the plan. So I know we were talking about time, and I know that, time, that's a resource that doesn't get replenished. And I'm curious how you guard your time, your sanity to really have that space. Do you have any boundary rituals, or just how do you implement that to guard your time and sanity?
Yeah, this is a fun question. I want to finish a thought that I didn't finish though, which was just that the reason why a thing needs to light you up is because it's a much higher service when you're showing up lit up, because so many people don't have that in their life and they need to know it's possible. That's just the thought that I wanted to finish on there.
Yes.
So if you're showing up doing something because you think you're supposed to or because you have to, you're not modeling anything revolutionary for anyone. And so for people who are out there like, yeah, I'm shifting paradigms, you're not shifting shit if you're doing things that are not aligned with who you are. Yes. You're just literally glorifying the status quo.
And what I love about that is that the non-sexy work that feels like work doesn't feel as hard when you're fueled with that creative energy and
it doesn't at all.
Joy. It's like, oh my, this is like the work.
Quite easy.
Yes.
Like a devotional practice. Okay. So time, I used to be a little more hypervigilant about this, but then I just got some systems in place. For the very most part, unless there's a real extenuating circumstance, I just don't schedule calls on Mondays and Fridays. I'm totally cool doing any kinds of calls, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. But then what I also realized energetically is to try to batch things. So if I have coaching clients, I will try to do all those on the same day. I try not to mix call days. So if I'm doing podcast interviews, I try to do those and not have any coaching calls. Does that make sense?
Yes, totally. Yes.
Because it's different energy. It's different mindset. It's different brain space, different heart space, different energy to be in. If I'm going to be interviewing people, if I'm going to be getting interviewed, and if I'm going to be having coaching calls with clients. Of course, there's like an extenuating, like one-off situation here and there. But what I also found in terms of efficiency is if I have an interview in the morning and then like a coaching call in the afternoon, the time in between becomes useless space to me. I don't know why that is. I'm not going to try to analyze it or explain it. And that might not be the case for other people. But for me, it works best to like batch specific things in specific chunks. And for the most part, to dedicate a day to it rather than try to like task switch, especially with creative things.
Yeah. I'm curious with you with podcasting, what's your rhythm and flow around batching that? Like how many interviews will you do in a day?
Oh, you know what's so fascinating? When I first started my show, and it was called Untamed the Wild Soul in 2015, all the way up through 2017, I could do up to like 4 or 5 interviews in a day. But towards the end of 2017, when I started shifting out of being as both light and whitewashed in the topic, like feel good, self-help, personal development type stuff, and started going deeper and expanding the conversations to include more social justice oriented things and things that are just deeper. And for some people more intense, more confronting and more challenging to be with, I can really only do 2 or 3 in a day. Because these conversations are like growing me. Like while I'm having them, I'm like, damn, blowing my own mind and really giving me things to consider in my own learning and education and integration of things. Yeah, it's down to like 2 or 3 now. And so I'll do interviews like 2 days out of the month.
Yeah.
I realized as well, I can't have interviews every week.
Yeah, I'm the same. I love that.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about your leaning into making that shift to have these deeper conversations. And I know that you've been very vocal about this shift and this change to speak about topics that are really important in the world, and also not being on board with people that are continuing to stay silent. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just curious about the initiation into really taking a stand for being a voice and a platform to share these conversations, and not easy conversations. And then how do you see yourself inviting other influencers into the network to really join you speaking about these topics?
This is a fun question. So first of all, the same way shifting from fitness into wild soul movement was just a natural evolution, integrating these deeper conversations was a natural evolution, because wild soul movement always from the beginning has been about liberation. It's been about liberating ourselves from the programming and conditioning that keeps us small, that keeps us insecure, not trusting, not feeling worthy, not loving ourselves, all of those things, being emotionally immature, all that. And so honestly, it was just a huge gap for me. If we're talking about deprogramming and deconditioning to liberate ourselves, well, I can't not look at the implications of what goes on in the collective and what are the systems we're all indoctrinated into and impacted by, like patriarchy, racism, all the isms, right? So it just made sense that, like, of course, this is a huge part of the conversation that I needed to get a better education around and just include. Am I going to become an expert on it? I'm not, because this is a lifelong journey, commitment, and unpacking for me. But it just makes sense in my platform and integrates in my message. And so where I'm inviting other people to do the same is lead by example. It's just kind of how I do anything. I can't tell you, I didn't realize this until just a couple months ago, Jada, but we have so many peers who listen to my podcast who I didn't know listens to my podcast. Our peers and colleagues lurk on my work. And I get it, because it can be intimidating, right? But then I'll get DMs from someone, or someone will text me like, oh my God, I listened to this. Thank you so much. I'm learning. And that's great. I'm not one of those people who's out here telling people it's not good enough, do more. It's like everyone kind of has to unfold in their own way, I believe, in anything, in any kind of work, but just stay in it. And so, but where I'm having more urgency is for people to go, hey, let's just look at where you're doing harm in your business. Who are you harming? And are people telling you and then you're not listening to them? Because that's a freaking problem. So case in point, several months ago, there was a big to-do on something that Danielle Laporte put out. And several people, Black and brown women, were like, yo, this isn't okay. Articles were written on Medium about it. It really wasn't okay. The way she handled it wasn't okay. It just was not handled well. And then you would think that after something like that happens, it wouldn't happen again. But just a couple weeks ago, it happened again. And people were like, yo, what the hell? And so one of the other ways that I could participate in this is, like, even as a peer and a colleague, I sent her a message and I was like, hey, people are telling you that you're hurting and you're harming them. Please stop doing this, And like, I don't need to share the back and forth on that message because it was a private conversation, but like, those are the kinds of things I get to do. I get to like poke someone and be like, yo, do you need help? I got resources. I've been learning. I'm not perfect at this, but like, this is important, especially when people are straight up telling you, hey, this is a problem. And a lot of us have been there. I had that 4 years ago. Someone was like, hey, this is offensive. And I couldn't hear her at the time, but that only happened once. I didn't need to have that experience again, nor did I need to have it on a big public scale, And even now, people know, did I do something wrong? Did I say, cool, tell me. And then I'll usually tell my platform and be like, yo, I said this. I'm so sorry. I'm not going to do it again. I'm working on it. And then people are like, oh my God, thank you. And I think part of that is an enormous willingness to mess up in public and not be perfect and go, we're all freaking human, y'all.
I love that. You know what? And it's also being open and receptive to feedback instead of going into defense mode, right? Like
It's one of the biggest parts.
I mean, I can see myself doing that sometimes in my relationship dynamics with my husband, you know, where we go into defense mode and we're not open and being receptive to really listening so that we can make some shifts. And it's something that I tell, you know, my daughter Zoe, I was just telling her this morning, like, I was like, I'm not perfect. I'm human, and parents make mistakes and mess up. And I was like, and you'll make mistakes and mess up too. So just like to constantly remind that we don't have to be perfect in these hard conversations, that we can own our mess. We can own when we make mistakes and then be open, receptive to feedback to make some shifts so that we don't keep hurting people or ourselves.
Yeah. And listen, I'm not into unsolicited feedback when it has to do with things that people have no business giving me their opinion or feedback on.
Yes.
If I'm sharing from my personal experience, which I do a lot, I'm 100% not open to unsolicited advice or opinions, right? Because I'm not asking you. I'm not asking my audience. I don't need advice. I don't need support. I'm sharing from this thing. But when I'm in a process or I'm unpacking and I'm in an inquiry and someone gives feedback, like, yeah, that's great. Because I can learn from that. You know what I mean? And that's not infringing on my agency, sovereignty, or lived experience. But when someone who has a different lived experience from me is like, hey, what you're saying here is incomplete, or you're missing this part, or maybe you're not considering this, I need to know that, because that's literally one of the only ways I'm going to be able to learn. And I can't be defensive. I could just be like, damn, thank you. And even if it makes me feel like anything, shame, guilt, oh, I should have known that. Oh man, that was silly. Oh, I'm so sorry. I get to just have those feelings and deal with it. It's part of that's how we build our resiliency.
Yes. For people who might, and I know you said that there's the unfolding, like everyone has their own journey to unfold, but for people who are kind of teetering on the fence to be more vocal but are afraid, what would be your call to action to them, or like that first small step to take an initiation to leveraging their platform, their voice? Because behind the scenes, I have so many people reaching out to me where they're like, I'm afraid to even like share my voice now because I might mess it up. I might offend somebody. And so then there's also this silencing that happens as well.
Well, I think one of my favorite ways is to share what you're learning. Don't be prescriptive. You're not here to teach a thing that you're not qualified to teach. So share what you're learning, post the books that you're reading, and pass the mic. Use your platform to go, here's who I'm learning from, right? Like I share Desiree Adaway's stuff all the time, Stacey Jordan Shelton, Dr. T, who is one of my favorite interviews all year. I share, things that my friends post from like that they're unpacking and that they're learning. Sonia Renee Taylor, like there's just so many people who have been doing this work for so long that I just pass the mic,
I love that.
Even if it's in the simplest way, you're just going, this really struck me today. Or like, wow, I'm reading this. I'm thinking about this. I'm listening to this. I share posts on Facebook all the time and I'm like, damn, this is good. Ooh, I hadn't thought about this before. So I'm more so sharing my process and my learning than like positioning myself like I know shit,
Yes. I love that so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Something that for you show up online and I know you've had a dance, like going in and out and sharing on social media. But one thing that I know many people see in you is you show up so authentically you. And it's also something so many people, they could watch you being so unfiltered, so raw, so you, so fully expressed. It's something so many people struggle with. And I'm just curious, how do you stay in check with like owning yourself, being super authentic online and embodying your brand in that way?
I just am who I am. Like, honestly, it's just so much easier to be myself. It's not a strategy. I don't have to like the check-in instead of becomes, is this a good strategy? Is this going to convert? The check-in is this an integrity or is it not? Is this useful or is it not? Does this feel good? Like, why am I doing this? I have 3 reasons if I'm ever posting or sharing anything. Is it useful? Is it modeling? Is it like showing you, who I am and what I'm about? Or is it funny? Because like we need joy. We need to laugh. With the world in the state that it is right now, we could all crumble, especially those of us that are sensitive or empathic. We could crumble under the pressure of all of it and quote, feeling all the feels, right? We have to laugh. We have to find some joy. It's funny, our mutual friend, Natalie McNeil, she posted something on Instagram today from a conversation we had on a beach walk. I didn't even remember having. Apparently the thing that I said was, if we don't have our joy, what else do we have left? And like, that's the thing. You just got to friggin' laugh sometimes. You got to like share a penis meme or something, you know?
Which is a perfect transition into you've leaned into sharing your voice as a stand-up comic.
Girl, it's so fun.
Like, take me to the first seedling of this journey.
Okay. Well, if we took you to the first seedling of the journey, it would be to my living room, Renwick Avenue on Staten Island when I was like 8. I remember seeing Rosie O'Donnell on VH1 Stand-Up Spotlight and being like, wait, this is a job? You get to just stand there and make people laugh? And then what's actually hilarious, so my brother has been doing stand-up for like 8 years, and the other day he texted me. This was so funny. And I bet a bunch of people listening can relate, depending on like what were the dynamics in your household growing up. My brother is like, I think I realized why we love comedy so much and always have, because it's one person standing on a stage getting to finish their thought. No one can interrupt them, and it happens to be funny. So when I was little, I was enamored with it. I thought it was amazing, but it's just not ever, for whatever reason, nothing I ever thought about pursuing. But this year, there were just a couple comedians that I was like, damn, I really could do this, I think. Like Ali Wong. I was at the Hollywood Improv. I saw Whitney Cummings. I watched W. Kamau Bell's special. And, you know, I've always loved people like Dave Chappelle. I've really gotten into Trevor Noah, who's such an amazing storyteller. And I was like, I have so many ridiculous stories. And my buddy, Sean Lynch, who's been in the comedy industry for decades, was like, you should just do it. He's like, you know, he's my brother's friend originally. Now he's a close friend of the family. He's like, I've been at your house when you're like sitting at the island with a bunch of comedians and you're just like holding your own. He's like, just do it. He's like, you're confident. Just like try. And it's true. What I didn't realize until I started doing it is actually the hardest part for comedians is confidence and stage presence, which I've been speaking since I was 19. So that part is not an issue for me at all, but like learning how to like write and craft jokes, that part is. But then the other thing is, as someone who's been like writing and doing marketing and copywriting for so many years, you know, open loops, closed loops, storytelling, like callbacks, all those types of things, I'm really good at putting a set together.
I love it.
The punchlines, like the setups and punchlines, like that's a skill I really need to go deeper on, the actual comedy writing. But there's actually hella skills that go into it that I've been developing in other areas of my life for over a decade. So it's been a pretty easy transition.
And you're actually doing, like, you're getting paid.
I'm getting paid.
Shows.
So my friend Sean is my blessing. He's like my comedy guardian angel, because once I went to an open mic with him and a couple other things, and once he saw me on stage, he's like, yeah, I'm going to start inviting you to do shows. He's like, you're pretty good. And every time he invites me, I just say yes, because it's ridiculous. I started in June, and by September, I did my first paid thing. And he was like, you understand that what you've done in 3 months is what takes people 3 years, right? And I'm like, yeah, but like, do you understand that I've been technically training in most of this for 13, 14 years? So it wasn't like it's like that thing Marie Forleo said many years ago that always gets quoted. If you want to be an overnight success, you need to be an everyday hustler.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited. And I'm curious, like, what's, to say your dreams out loud around this vision, I'm just so curious, like, what vision are you holding that I can hold for you? And
who wouldn't want to be like, I want a Netflix special? But for real, a lot of my material right now, because I'm in this epic phase of my life that I'm calling my conscious hoe phase. Or just dating. Like, I'm doing an intentional year of dating. And so a lot of my material is about dating, which the jokes write themselves. One of my sets, like, I spend like 7 minutes just reading Bumble profiles because they're hilarious. My favorite one says one line. It just says, I won't make a skin dress out of you.
What?
Right. I have so many questions. So I think it would just be, I'm tickled by the idea of someday having a Netflix special called Swipe Left. So if people are listening and they've never done online dating, swipe right is a yes, swipe left is a no. But, I honestly, one of my favorite things about comedy is I'm letting it be a real surrender experiment. So I'm really not attached. I just keep saying yes. But I think the bigger vision would actually be to eventually be peers with some of my favorite comedians. It would be to be in a lineup at the Comedy Store with Ali Wong or with Neil Brennan or Dave Chappelle or you know what I mean? Or get invited to I'm forgetting what it is, but there's a big comedy festival in Montreal every year. Just get to do some shit with some people that I've been enjoying their work my whole life.
So cool. I think you have such a beautiful, playful practice in exploring all parts and edges of your curiosity and your passions, because I've seen you take your dance classes from pole to Latin, and now comedy. And it's just this deep inquiry to keep learning and follow the joy.
Yeah, 100%. And honestly, I'm applying the same thing to dating. So I'm having incredible dating experiences and some total heinous ones too. But it's I'm having these unicorn experiences. And I think because of that, because of the openness and the childlike wonder, that energy brings in more of that,
Yes. And I think that is what I've brought to this next iteration of my work of I'm tapping into the inner child, that childlike joy of space and play and creation. And you need time to just allow your imagination to just unravel. And I think it's really, really beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you.
So my last question for you is, what is your why right now? What vision are you moving towards with the fullness, the richness, and the embodiment of your body of work right now?
So I started saying this thing a couple months ago. It's to be safer in the world and to be safer for the world. And it relates to part of the conversation we were having earlier about the deeper, more honest, impactful conversations that we've been having on the podcast since I changed the name of it to Truth Telling last year. And that's to really realize we all have unconscious biases in all areas of our lives. And so to realize, what do we need to know? What do we need to bring into conscious awareness so that we could be safer in the world? Right. But then also so that we could be safer for the world, so that we're out there doing way more good than harm. And so I think that's one of the biggest, most important things for me right now.
Amazing. And is there anything we haven't covered that you'd love to share?
No, I love you. This is so fun. I knew it would be this juicy and get to hit on so many different things. I feel very satisfied. Thank you.
And if people want to play with you, learn more about your work, where can they find you?
WildSoulMovement.com is the best website to go to. Everything I do will be there. And then if you're on the social medias, Instagram is my favorite place. And that would be at Elizabeth DiAlto.
Yes. And you share so many great resources, and you do pass the mic consistently. When I'm on your stories, I'm ooh, click here, click there. And I'm just discovering so many fascinating people. So I love
that's what I love to use the stories for. I love when Instagram added that add to story function. I was yes.
It's beautiful. Yeah. It's just, but the generosity that you bring, that it's what social media platforms are meant for. It's not meant to be, the guru standing on a platform, standing above people, but to actually be standing with people and sharing and collaborating and collectively celebrating and sharing one another's voices. So I really appreciate that about you.
Thanks.
Awesome, love. We did it. And I love you to pieces.
Thank you for listening, everyone.
Thank you so much for your heart and attention in listening to Lead with Love. If this message, leading with love in life and business, and remembering the humans and beating hearts behind the numbers and all of that good stuff, I would love for you to take the time to leave an honest review. It would mean the world to me, and it also helps more people find out about the goodness and helping spreading more love in the world, which we really, really need. So I would really appreciate that, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.